She was alone on Christmas Eve at a diner. The millionaire said, "Mind if I join you?" Hello everyone, and welcome back to Romance Rewind Stories. Before we dive into today's incredible story, I have a small favor to ask. If you're enjoying these heartwarming tales, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. It's quick, it's free, and it's the best way to support us in bringing you more emotional romance stories. And here's something I'd love to know. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I always enjoy seeing our amazing community from around the world. Oh, and if this story touches your heart, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps us grow and reach more people who love these kinds of tales. Now let's get into today's story. She was alone on Christmas Eve at a diner. The millionaire said, "Mind if I join you?" Snow fell softly outside the windows of Stella's diner, coating the empty Chicago streets in a blanket of white. It was Christmas Eve, 11:30 at night, and the city had gone quiet in that way it only did once a year, when everyone was home with family, wrapped in warmth and tradition and love. Everyone, except Cordelia Hayes. She sat alone in a cracked vinyl booth, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The diner was nearly empty, just her, the tired waitress behind the counter, and the cook visible through the kitchen window. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, competing with the ancient radio playing tinny Christmas carols that had been overplayed since Thanksgiving. At 31, Cordelia had thought she'd be somewhere different by now. Married, maybe. Definitely not spending Christmas Eve alone in a diner, watching other people's happiness through frosted windows. But life had other plans. Her engagement had ended 6 months ago, when she discovered her fiancé had been cheating for over a year. Her parents had retired to Florida, and with the flights cancelled due to the snowstorm, she couldn't join them. Her few close friends were all with their own families. So here she was, alone on Christmas Eve, with a piece of apple pie she wasn't eating and memories she couldn't escape. The bell above the door chimed, bringing in a gust of cold air and snowflakes. Cordelia glanced up out of habit, then did a double take. The man who entered was striking in a way that didn't quite fit the shabby diner. He wore an expensive wool coat dusted with snow, dark hair slightly disheveled from the wind, and had the kind of face that belonged in magazine ads, all sharp angles and intense eyes. But what caught her attention was his expression. He looked as lost as she felt. He stood in the entrance for a moment, snow melting on his shoulders, scanning the nearly empty space. His eyes landed on Cordelia, and for a brief second, something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, not of each other, but of shared loneliness. The waitress, a woman named Marge, who'd worked there for 30 years, looked up from her crossword puzzle. "Sit anywhere, hun. Menus on the table." The man moved toward the counter, then seemed to change his mind. He walked directly to Cordelia's booth instead. "I know this is forward," he said, his voice cultured but warm, "but would you mind if I joined you? I really don't want to spend Christmas Eve eating alone, and you look like maybe you don't either." Cordelia said no. Should have told this handsome stranger that she preferred solitude, but something about his honest vulnerability made her nod instead. "Sure," she said. "Misery loves company, right?" He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and slid into the booth across from her. Up close he was even more striking, but there were shadows under his eyes, a tightness around his mouth that spoke of his own struggles. "I'm Matthias," he said, extending his hand across the table. "Matthias Blackwood." "Cordelia Hayes," she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, warm despite the cold outside. "So, Cordelia Hayes," Matthias said, signaling to Marge for coffee, "what's your story? Why are you spending Christmas Eve in a diner instead of somewhere warm with people who love you?" "That's quite a question for someone I just met," Cordelia said, but there was no bite in her tone. "Fair point," Matthias conceded. "How about this? I'll tell you my sad Christmas story, and then you can decide if you want to share yours." "Deal." Despite everything, Cordelia felt herself smile. Deal. Marge brought Matthias his coffee and a menu he didn't look at. He wrapped his hands around the mug, as if drawing warmth from it, and began. "I'm supposed to be in Aspen right now," he said. "Big family gathering. My mother planned it months ago. All my siblings, their spouses, their kids, the whole Blackwood clan together for Christmas." He paused, staring into his coffee. "But 3 days ago, my girlfriend, well, ex-girlfriend now, decided to tell me she's been sleeping with my business partner for the past 8 months. Merry Christmas, right?" "Ouch," Cordelia said sympathetically. "That's brutal." "The kicker," Matthias continued, "I was going to propose to her on Christmas Day, had the ring and everything. My whole family knew, so I cancelled my trip because I couldn't face them. Couldn't face their pity, their questions, their well-meaning attempts to fix me." He looked up at her. "So I've been driving around the city for hours, and I ended up here, at a diner on Christmas Eve, about to have terrible coffee and probably mediocre pie with a beautiful stranger." Cordelia felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "The pie is actually pretty good," she said, "and I'm sorry about your girlfriend, ex-girlfriend. That's a terrible thing to go through, especially during the holidays." "Your turn," Matthias said gently. "Fair is fair." Cordelia took a sip of her cold coffee, grimacing. "My fiancé cheated on me too. I found out 6 months ago. Walked in on him with his secretary. How cliché is that?" She laughed bitterly. "I was supposed to be married by now. We had the venue booked, the dress bought, the whole thing. Instead, I'm alone in the city because flights got cancelled and I can't get to my parents in Florida." "So we're both members of the Christmas Eve Heartbreak Club," Matthias said. "Population 2. Apparently so." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the absurdity of the situation settling over them. Then Matthias flagged down Marge. "2 pieces of apple pie," he said, "and fresh coffee for both of us. Actually, make it hot chocolate instead. It's Christmas Eve. We should at least pretend to have some holiday spirit." "Coming right up, hun," Marge said with a knowing smile. Over pie and hot chocolate, they talked. Really talked, in the way people can only when they know they'll never see each other again. Cordelia told him about her job as a book editor, about the manuscripts she'd fallen in love with, about the dream of starting her own publishing house someday. Matthias told her he ran a tech company, something about AI and machine learning that went over her head, but that his real passion was photography, something he'd given up years ago for the sake of serious work. "Why did you give it up?" Cordelia asked, genuinely curious. "Because it wasn't practical," Matthias said. "Because my father said art was fine as a hobby, but not as a career. Because I built a company that became successful, and suddenly I didn't have time for anything else." He paused. "Looking back, I think I gave up everything that made me happy in pursuit of success. And now I'm successful and miserable. Great trade-off." "It's not too late," Cordelia said, "to pick up photography again." "And isn't it?" Matthias asked. "I'm 35. I run a company worth hundreds of millions. I can't just walk away and become a starving artist." "Why not?" Cordelia challenged. "Life's too short to be miserable. Trust me, I learned that the hard way. I spent 3 years with someone who made me feel small, who criticized my job, my dreams, my taste in books, and I stayed because I thought that's what you did. You compromised. You made it work. But you know what I realized after he was gone?" "What?" "I was happier alone than I ever was with him. And that scared me. But it also freed me." She met his eyes. "So maybe this heartbreak is a gift. Maybe it's the universe telling us we deserve better than settling." Matthias stared at her for a long moment. "You're either very wise or we've both gone slightly crazy from loneliness." "Can't it be both?" He laughed, a genuine full laugh that transformed his face. "God, when's the last time I laughed like that? When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because you should?" Cordelia countered. Matthias thought about it. I honestly can't remember. Then let's make a deal, Cordelia said impulsively. We have, she checked her watch, 37 minutes until Christmas. Let's spend them doing things we actually want to do, not things we should do. No obligations, no expectations, just living. Nathan, that's the most spontaneous thing I've heard all year, Matthias said, but he was smiling. What did you have in mind? They paid their bill, Matthias insisted, leaving Marge a tip that made her eyes widen, and stepped out into the snowy night. The city was transformed, everything softened and quiet under its white blanket. When I was a kid, Cordelia said, tilting her face up to catch snowflakes on her tongue, my dad would take me out on Christmas Eve, and we'd walk through the neighborhood looking at lights. We'd make up stories about the families inside, imagining their lives. That sounds nice, Matthias said, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Want to walk with me? I know a neighborhood nearby that goes all out with decorations. They walked through the quiet streets, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. Matthias told her about his own childhood Christmases, elaborate parties his mother threw, where everything had to be perfect, and he had to be on his best behavior. No running, no mess, no spontaneity. That sounds exhausting, Cordelia said. It was, Matthias admitted. I think that's why I became so rigid as an adult. It's all I knew. They found the neighborhood Cordelia remembered. Houses decked out in lights, inflatable Santas, mechanical reindeer. It was gaudy and excessive, and absolutely magical. Make up a story, Cordelia said, pointing to a house covered in rainbow lights. Who lives there? Matthias played along. An eccentric artist who believes Christmas lights are a form of expression. She has 17 cats, all named after Renaissance painters. Cordelia laughed. That's very specific. What about that one? She pointed to a house with elegant white lights, a retired couple who've been married for 50 years. They have the same argument every year about whether the lights are crooked, but really, they just love spending time together. I like that one, Cordelia said softly. They kept walking, making up increasingly elaborate stories, laughing at their own ridiculousness. At some point, Matthias took her hand, not in a romantic way, but in a companionable one. They were old friends instead of strangers who'd met an hour ago. Can I tell you something? Matthias said as they stood in front of a particularly spectacular light display. This is the best Christmas Eve I've had in years, maybe ever. Even though you're spending it with a stranger in the cold, instead of in Aspen with your family. Especially because of that, Matthias said. My family would have treated me with kid gloves, tiptoeing around my feelings. You're treating me like a person, like someone capable of handling life. I didn't realize how much I needed that. I get it, Cordelia said. Everyone wanted to handle me with care after my breakup. But sometimes you don't need careful. Sometimes you just need real. They walked back toward the diner where they'd left their cars, taking the long route, neither quite ready for the evening to end. The snow had stopped, and the sky was starting to clear, revealing stars. Do you believe in fate? Matthias asked suddenly. That's a big question for Christmas Eve, Cordelia said. I'm serious. Do you think it means something that we both ended up at that specific diner at that specific time? That out of everyone in this city, we found each other? Cordelia considered it. I think sometimes the universe puts people in our path when we need them. Whether that's fate or just really good timing, I don't know, but I'm glad I met you tonight, Matthias Blackwood. I'm glad I met you too, Cordelia Hayes. They reached the diner parking lot. Cordelia's modest sedan was covered in a fresh layer of snow. Matthias's car, a sleek Tesla that definitely stood out, was parked nearby. So, Matthias said, and for the first time that evening, he looked uncertain. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I don't want this to end. This night, this feeling, whatever this is. Me neither, Cordelia admitted, but it's Christmas. And we're both clearly dealing with stuff. Maybe it's better to just remember this as a perfect moment and leave it at that. Or, Matthias said, maybe we could have coffee tomorrow Actual planned coffee, not accidental diner coffee. Get to know each other when we're not both running from our lives. Cordelia hesitated. Everything logical in her brain said this was too fast, too soon. She'd just gotten out of a relationship. He'd just been betrayed. They were both vulnerable and probably making terrible decisions. But standing there in the snow, looking at this man who'd somehow made her feel more herself in one evening than she had in months, logic seemed overrated. "Okay," she said, "coffee tomorrow, but no pressure. Just two people who had a nice evening seeing if there's anything more." "Deal," Matthias said, relief evident in his smile. He pulled out his phone and they exchanged numbers. But before they could say goodbye, church bells began to ring in the distance. Midnight, Christmas Day. "Merry Christmas, Cordelia," Matthias said softly. "Merry Christmas, Matthias." On impulse, Cordelia stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek. It was brief, innocent, but when she pulled back, the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "That was," he started. "Mistletoe tradition," Cordelia interrupted, though there was no mistletoe anywhere nearby. "Merry Christmas." She got in her car before she could do something really impulsive, like kiss him properly. In her rearview mirror, she watched him standing in the snow, a smile on his face, looking less lost than he had when she'd first seen him. Christmas morning, Cordelia woke up in her small apartment to find a text from Matthias. "Is it too early to say I can't stop thinking about last night? Also, I picked up my camera this morning. First time in 8 years. Apparently you're a good influence." She smiled, typing back. "It's never too early for honesty, and I'm glad about the camera. Coffee at 2 p.m.? Can't wait." They met at a small cafe in Lincoln Park, and if their first meeting had been born of loneliness and chance, this one was deliberate and clear-eyed. Over lattes and pastries, they learned the details they'd skipped the night before. Matthias's company developed AI for medical diagnostics. Cordelia worked for one of the big publishing houses, but dreamed of championing diverse voices that traditional publishers overlooked. "Why don't you do it?" Matthias asked. "Start your own press?" "Money," Cordelia said simply. "Publishing requires capital, and I spent my savings on a wedding that never happened." "What if you had an investor?" Matthias asked carefully. "Someone who believed in your vision?" "Are you offering?" Cordelia asked, half joking. "What if I am?" Matthias said seriously. "I've spent the last 10 years making money. Maybe it's time I invested in something that matters." "Matthias, we just met." "I know. I know it's crazy and fast and probably a terrible business decision. But last night you asked me, when's the last time I did something just because I wanted to? Well, I want to do this. Not to impress you or win you over, but because I believe in doing things that matter, and I think you'd create something meaningful." Cordelia stared at him, emotions warring in her chest. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," Matthias said. "No pressure, but let me at least look at your business plan if you have one." That coffee date turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a long walk through the city. They talked about everything, their families, their fears, their dreams. Matthias told her about the pressure of running a company he'd never really wanted to build. Cordelia confessed that her ex had made her doubt her own judgment so thoroughly that she'd stopped trusting herself. "Can I tell you something?" Matthias said as they stood on a bridge overlooking the Chicago River. "My ex used to say I was too serious, too rigid, that I'd forgotten how to have fun. And she was right. But last night, walking around looking at Christmas lights with you, making up silly stories, I remembered what it felt like to just enjoy something. No agenda, no optimization, just joy." "You're giving me too much credit," Cordelia said. "You did that yourself. I was just there." "You being there made all the difference," Matthias said. He turned to face her fully. "I know this is fast. I know we both just got out of terrible relationships. I know all the reasons this is a bad idea. But I can't stop thinking that maybe the universe put us in that diner for a reason." "Matthias, I'm not asking for forever," he interrupted gently. "I'm just asking for a chance. Let's see where this goes. Slowly, carefully, honestly. No games, no pretending. Just two people who found each other at exactly the right moment. Cordelia really looked at him, at the hope in his eyes, the vulnerability in his expression, and she realized something. She'd spent so long being careful, being practical, protecting herself. And where had it gotten her? Alone on Christmas Eve in a diner. She said, "Let's try, but slowly. I need slowly." "Slowly works for me," Matthias said, and his smile could have lit up the entire city. They spent Christmas night together, not in a romantic way, but in a comfortable one. They ordered Chinese food, the only thing open, and watched old Christmas movies in Cordelia's apartment. Matthias showed her his photography portfolio from years ago, and she shared manuscripts she'd championed that her bosses had rejected. "These are incredible," Matthias said, flipping through her notes. "Why aren't these being published?" "Because they're not commercially viable," Cordelia said bitterly. "Because they're written by marginalized voices that the industry doesn't think will sell. That's their loss," Matthias said, "and maybe your opportunity." Over the next few months, they built something real. Matthias started taking time away from his company, delegating more, making room for photography. Cordelia began seriously planning her publishing venture, and Matthias, true to his word, invested not just money, but time, connecting her with lawyers and accountants who could help make her dream real. They took it slow, as promised. Coffee dates turned into dinners, dinners turned into weekends. They learned each other's quirks and wounds, their triggers and joys. They had their first fight about money, about boundaries, about the pace of their relationship, and learned how to repair and grow stronger. "I'm falling in love with you," Matthias told her one evening, 6 months after they'd met. They were in his apartment, where he'd set up a darkroom to develop his photographs. "I didn't mean to. I tried not to, but I am." "I know," Cordelia said softly. "I've been falling too, and it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because last time I fell in love, I lost myself," Cordelia admitted. "I became smaller, quieter, less. I'm afraid of doing that again." Matthias took her hands. "Then let's make a promise. We only grow bigger together, never smaller. If either of us starts to feel like we're losing ourselves, we speak up. We fight for each other by fighting for ourselves first." "Deal," Cordelia whispered, and kissed him. A year after that Christmas Eve in the diner, they stood in that same parking lot, but this time it was planned. Matthias had asked her to meet him there, and Cordelia had been confused but intrigued. "Remember this?" he asked, gesturing to the diner. "Of course," Cordelia said. "How could I forget? A year ago tonight I walked into that diner broken and lost. And I found you. The person who reminded me how to live, how to dream, how to be more than just successful." He knelt down in the snow, pulling out a small box. "Cordelia Hayes, I'm not promising perfect. I'm not promising easy, but I'm promising real. I'm promising growth and adventure and partnership. Will you marry me?" Through tears, Cordelia looked at the man who'd become her best friend, her partner, her home. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Inside the diner, Marge watched through the window and smiled. She'd seen a lot in 30 years working Christmas Eves, but she'd never seen two people find each other quite like that. Later, when they came inside to warm up and celebrate with hot chocolate, their tradition now, Marge brought them pie on the house. "You two give me hope," she said, "that good things can come from lonely nights." "The best things," Matthias corrected, squeezing Cordelia's hand. "The very best things." And outside, snow began to fall again, blanketing the city in white. But inside the diner, two people who'd found each other in the darkness had created their own light, a light that would last long after Christmas ended. Because sometimes the best gifts aren't wrapped in paper and bows. Sometimes they're wrapped in second chances and snowy nights and the courage to say yes to possibility when you're standing alone in a diner on Christmas Eve. And that's where our story ends today. What did you think? Did Cordelia and Matthias's Christmas miracle touch your heart? Let us know in the comments what your favorite moment was. If you enjoyed this story, we have so many more waiting for you. Check out our playlist for more heartwarming romance tales that will make you believe in love all over again. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and give us a thumbs up. Your support means everything to us. Until next time, keep believing in love, keep believing in second chances, and remember, the best stories are the ones that remind us we all deserve our happily ever after. See you in the next story.